Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's Question of the Week. This week, a listener asked, how to reconcile conflicting scriptures regarding divorce. This is a good question that Chris goes to the Bible to help us understand more of this question. And enjoy the discussion.
Welcome to our program. Please go ahead with your call.
When you're doing your own studies, you just come across some things, and I just came across something, and I don't know how to, remedy it. So I need your help, please. 1 Corinthians 7:14.
1 Corinthians 7 and verse 14. For the unbelieving husband is sanctified by the wife, and the unbelieving wife is sanctified by the husband. Else were your children unclean, but now are they holy.
And then I believe the other one is in Ezra 10, and I think it starts in 1, but around 3, basically, where he tells them they have to divorce their foreign wives. I think that starts at 3. So how do we rectify, God doesn't want people to divorce, but these people are told to leave these unbelieving wives, right? So I just want to understand how these two things could work out, sir, in my mind. Thank you.
Well, there was allowance in the Old Testament. God moved Moses to write in Deuteronomy chapter 24. If we go there, Deuteronomy 24, verse 1, when a man has taken a wife and married her, and it come to pass that she find no favor in his eyes, because he has found some uncleanness in her, let him write her a bill of divorcement and give it in her hand and send her out of his house. That was the allowance, and the Pharisees brought that up to Jesus because they brought up the whole question of marriage and divorce in Matthew 19. And Christ said, what God has joined together, let not man put asunder. In response, Matthew 19, verse 3, the Pharisees also came unto him, tempting him, and saying unto him, is it lawful for a man to put away his wife for every cause? And he answered and said unto them, have ye not read that he which made them at the beginning made them male and female, and said, for this cause shall a man leave father and mother, and shall cleave to his wife, and they twain shall be one flesh. Wherefore they are no more twain, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let not man put asunder. So that's answering the question concerning, is it lawful for a man to put away his wife for every cause? What God has joined together, let not man put asunder. And put asunder means to separate. Do not separate from your wife. You stay married. Then they responded in verse 7, they say unto him, why did Moses then command to give a writing of divorcement and to put her away? He saith unto them, Moses, because of the hardness of your hearts, suffered you to put away your wives, but from the beginning it was not so. Moses, this is the reason God allowed Moses, and of course moved Moses, to give this commandment, was due to the hardness of Israel's hearts. And we know that God entered into a marriage relationship with Israel, and he speaks of divorcing Israel. And in the book of Isaiah, God does all things according to law. For his own purposes, he entered into this unusual marriage between himself and a corporate entity, the nation of Israel. They were married to God. And yet within Israel were mostly unsaved people who had hard hearts. And the history of Israel is a tale of unfaithfulness and disobedience and turning from God to idols and so forth. And therefore God had placed in the law, Deuteronomy 24:1, that gave permission for a man to divorce his wife. Not for a wife to divorce a man, but for a man to divorce his wife, because, of course, God was in the role of the man and Israel was in the role of the wife. And that's why. for the hardness of their hearts, God had that law in the books, and he did divorce Israel. The divorce was final when the veil of the temple was rent, divided, rent in twain. It was separated, it was put asunder. And that signified God's presence in the midst of Israel. But he ended that relationship. He departed from Israel. He divorced Israel. And so in Ezra, the law was still on the books, the law of Deuteronomy 24. And, there was other things going on. Israel had often gotten in trouble by becoming unequally yoked. Actually, the people of God, if you read the Bible right from Genesis, in Genesis chapter 6, the sons of men, no, it was the sons of God went after the daughters of men in Genesis 6 that provoked God to anger, which led up to the flood. As we read in Genesis 6, verse 4, there were giants in the earth in those days. And also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. And immediately we read, and God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And this was one of the big sins of Israel, again, that led to God judging Israel and Judah. It was, involved this going after strange wives. And now, after going through the 70-year tribulation where God punished Judah for its sins, including this sin of marrying women from other nations, after going through that and finally experiencing deliverance and coming out of Babylon and returning to the land, they returned to their old sins. And so the response of the people to put away their wives, these wives of other nations, it's basically, as though they were unequally yoked according to, I think it's 2 Corinthians that tells us, be not unequally yoked together. They entered into unequally yoked marriages, and there was something that could be done because divorce was permissible at that time due to that law in Deuteronomy 24. And so historically they put away their wives, and it showed something, it revealed a different character of the men of Israel, because in time past they never would have done it. They just continued stubbornly, rebelliously in sin, in their disobedience. But now something had changed, and they did put away their wives and repented. They repented. Of course, once, Christ answered the Pharisees and declared, what God has joined together, let not man put asunder. He indicated that law served its purpose for the hardness of your hearts. God did divorce Israel, but no more. Now there's no exceptions of any kind. There's nothing that can justify putting away a wife or divorce. Now, the verse that we read in 1 Corinthians 7 about an unbelieving wife sanctifying the husband, or an unbelieving husband sanctifying the wife, or else how could your children be holy? That's God indicating that he views the household of his people differently than he views other households. Because an elect child of God is in the home, the mother or the father, there is sanctification, or it's put apart in a way by God. This is what makes the children holy. The one parent who's a true elect child of God is praying, bringing the children before God in prayer and beseeching the Lord. And you don't get that when both parents are unsaved. They have no concern about that. You know, they think their children are wonderful and God's pleased with them just because they're cute. But as far as what the Lord is saying, he looks upon a family, a home differently if there is an elect within the household.